his solitary existence with the proverbial arrow of karma. My mother came from a strict Catholic background and was a brilliant student at the University of Louvain, Catholic University of Louvain. She joined the resistance movement when the Nazis occupied Belgium and helped save the lives of many Jewish families. After the war, she went to Paris, where by chance she met Jules Beauchanin. He spoke to her of India and Tamil Nadu and ignited in her a great desire to come to India. After completing an assignment in Central Africa recording the music of forest-dwelling pygmies, she took the opportunity to come to Pondicherry on the invitation of a French scholar and historian, Alain Davidoux, who was running the Institute of Ethnology there in Pondicherry. Free from the rigid confines of a small-town Catholic upbringing, my mother delved into contemplative mystical Christianity, reading extensively on the subject. She had a beautiful voice and would sing Gregorian chants which would reverberate in the evening, in the stillness of a Himalayan evening, enthralling my father and me. My father, on the other hand, was a staunch follower of the Advaita Vedanta tradition, and Sri Raman Maharishi's teachings influenced him profoundly. He would unfailingly rise at 3 o'clock in the morning, much to the consternation of my mom, and light an oil lamp, meditating while gazing on the flame. Like a flame that does not move in the wind, the mind is focused on Brahman. The old house set in an apple orchard surrounded by thick forests and a 500 kilometers wide vista of the Himalayas in the north was a perfect place for him. Quiet and contemplated by nature, he was also full of laughter and love, and had the gift of being a great storyteller. He would regale and instruct me with stories told in the evenings by the fireside in a voice which was like honey poured over thunder. Swami Abhishiktananda first came to Vinsar in the summer of 1959, when my mother was away for the funeral of my grandfather in Belgium. Swamiji wrote a letter from Vinsar to his friend Father Lamarier, and I quote, "Alone here with a Punjabi Hindu, philosophy graduate, 2 years in London, businessman in Delhi, now spending his time in solitude and meditation. Long, frank, friendly, and at the same time pungent conversations about Christianity and Hinduism. He is a lover of Christ, but as a Hindu cannot accept either the Roman administrative or the Greek mental structure of the church. A Christ who would be straightaway understood and loved by the people of India, who would respond to the subconscious expectations of the people here, and who, like all divine forms in India, would allow himself in his quality as manifestation to be transcended into the mystery of the self." Unquote. Swami Abhishiktananda went on to write about my father, and I quote, "He's a young man who has deeply reflected, deeply meditated, and has authentically realized the incredible experience of being the I am, which is at once the axis and the summit of Hindu mysticism. We understood each other immediately and felt strangely close, but at the same time so distant that tears came to my eyes. The church's claim to be the only way revolts him. He put to me the most pressing existential questions about my own experience." Unquote. I remember my parents sometimes having heated discussions on the subject of Christianity and Hinduism, which usually ended in my mother flashing her green eyes at him and saying, "Vivek, you are impossible," and my father agreeing by saying, "Marie, you are always right." The discussions, which at times frightened me as a child by their intensity, would usually be followed by a game of chess or my father turning into the BBC on a small radio to listen to the evening news. To the credit of my parents, they never imposed their views on me, nor encouraged me to follow any particular path or religion. I was free to find my own way, which growing up in nature led me to believe the divine resided in the forests, in the animals, and the majestic mountains. I found myself being drawn to the worship of Lord Shiv Mahadev, who from my childhood was a manifestation of all that was free and wild and eternal in nature. Thanks to the open-mindedness and erudition of my parents, I imbibed by some sort of osmosis that, at the end of the day, all is one, and that fundamentally there is no difference between the Advaitic Aham Brahmasmi, Lao Tzu's abiding at the center of your being, Buddha's be a light unto yourself, or Christ's be still and know that I am God. Swami Abhishiktananda next visited Almora in 1960 and stayed with my parents in a house they had rented on the famous Kasar Devi Ridge, known as Crank's Ridge, on account of the many intellectuals and mystics who had made their homes on the ridge. These included the Austrian scholar Lama Anagarika Govinda, the Danish mystic Sunyata, the American painter Earl Brewster, and the Russian painter Rudolf Rey. Rudolf Rey painted several portraits of Swami Abhishiktananda, as described in the letter by Swamiji, and I quote, "My interest in Almora is the Russian painter. His abstracts have a marvelous, sometimes overwhelming truth. He has painted 2 portraits of me. These are shattering and profoundly true." My parents used to say of Rudolf Rey that Ru, as he was known to friends, used to often paint in the dark, unmindful and unaware of colors and patterns. He was, as my father said, drunk on beauty. For him, everything was beautiful. Swami Abhishiktananda must surely have had animated and profound discussions in the company of Ru, Lama Govinda, Sunyata, whom Sri Raman Maharishi described as a natural-born mystic, Earl Brewster and my parents. For Mass before leaving, Swamiji had given a bottle of good French wine for safekeeping. On the morning of the Mass, it was discovered that the bottle of wine had been consumed by my father and his artistic friends. So Swamiji had to substitute wine with Ganga water, Ganga Jala, and everyone had a good laugh, commenting on the integration of Hinduism and Christianity at last. The third and last visit of Swami Abhishiktananda to Almora was in 1961, when he attended a seminar which had been organized there. I quote from one of his letters, "Meeting in Almora in April on Vedantic experience and Christian experience. For those who have not met the real India, what do they know? They missionize like Don Quixote fighting with windmills, unaware that at one and the same time, India awaits Christianity, but also guards herself against it. At the meeting, Catholic priests, Anglican priests, and a Russian Orthodox monk. There were days of wonderful fullness and communion of spirit. Mass was celebrated facing the great peaks of the Himalayas." Unquote. From a chance meeting with Jules Mochana in Paris, which drew my mother to India, to the profound yet pungent discussions of my father and Swami Abhishiktananda in the solitude of Binsar, my parents' admiration for Swamiji lasted their lifetime, resulting in the inclusion of a small but precious circle of friends who had likewise known and admired Swamiji to visit Binsar regularly. The staunch disciple of Swamiji, Makshaduk, who was mentioned earlier, spent time in my parents' house, was an intense and serious person driven by a strange and powerful passion and committed to finding his true self. Moved by what he called the indescribable beauty of Binsar, he wrote a series of poems titled Who Are You? And said that nature had given him a great upadesh in the form of that soaring eagle. Many thinkers, mystics, and poets were similarly profoundly moved by the majesty of the forest. And the well-known Hindi poet Agyay, Satchidanand Vatsyayan, who was a close friend of my parents, wrote some of his best poetry in our house. His poem Mahavraksh Ke Niche reflects the sentiment expressed by Shaduk. To quote a line from the poem, जंगल में खड़े हो महावृक्ष के नीचे थोड़ी देर खड़े रहो वह महावृक्ष है अकेला है वन में है तुम महावृक्ष के नीचे अकेले हो वन तुम में है, which translates as, you are standing in the forest beneath a great tree. Remain a while. This is a great tree alone in the forest, and you under it are alone. The forest is in you. Monk Shaduk left Binsar and lived for some time near Rishikesh, and later we heard that he had disappeared under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Perhaps he had succeeded in becoming like the eagle, soaring alone into the akash of the self. They have all been absorbed into the infinite, Swami Abhishiktananda, the mystics and intellectuals, Valmora, and my parents. But as the haiku goes, the gong of the temple has fallen silent, but the sound continues to come from the flowers. Thank you very much.
So we're free to, if Mukti's willing, free to, if anybody wants to comment or ask a question to Mukti. And also, would somebody like to make a comment about what Mukti just shared? Yes. Okay, so what we'll do is
I would like to usually comment. I was so much enthralled by her narrative and the feel of Abhishiktananda alive and mistress. It's excellent. It's excellent. The core. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also looked at this view. It's a very beautiful piece of writing.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Please sit down. Sit down.
And thank you once again for beautifully sharing all your life. I mean, it is not something a piece of paper or not something you got. It's from your life, which you have really expressed from the bottom of your heart. And another beauty again, and as well as the title of this bridging, having said that you really live that experience of bridging that father and mother. It is so beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, well, in a way, Father, I mean, I was the result of interfaith alliance.
Yeah.
You know, and on one hand, it was a very wonderful experience because my parents didn't need to choose. But on the other hand, I would say that, you know, during my teens and early 20s, I was very torn. Who am I? What a Hindu, Christian, European, Indian? So there was conflict also. Yes.
It's not that easy, it's the basic thing, the identity crisis that you come across.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll open it up. Now, so this segment will just be anyone who wants to discuss something that's on their mind about anything that we've heard today, in any of the sharings, or something that's just crossed your mind today regarding why we're getting here. So, you can introduce yourself. Anyone?
I was reading about that lines Swami Abhishiktananda wrote to Saint Therese. He says, you don't have to take into that your desire, you want to become a contemplative, leave aside and live in the present moment. That is how I understood. Does it mean also that when I say I want to become a contemplative, I want to lead a contemplative life, I is the center, ego, where Swami Abhishiktananda is proposing that I need to go beyond that I. When I live in the present moment, there is no I there. But in the other way, it is I dominating. So this is how I understand the distinction between these two. Then I was asking somebody, um, I don't know whether Abhishiktananda proposed any method to overcome this, to come to this present moment. Because we see in the West, for example, centuries of Avila, John of the Cross, they were all contemplatives living the contemplative life. But no one proposes how to reach that interior castle. No method proposed. They suggest this. Whereas in the Indian context, for example, Zen and others, we have a particular method by which you can go beyond your I to the center. So what about Abhishektananda? Did he have any particular method? Of course, we know that he met Ravana Maharshi and he spent many hours or years meditating in the caves. But we don't know how he did it. Did he have any kind of those who followed him, any particular training or method he proposed? This is what I would like to know.
Nice point. Anyone want to respond to that?
I'm a student of Abhishiktananda. I did my doctorate on Abhishiktananda. So, the second chapter is on the spiritual sadhana of Abhishiktananda. First thing he did know, as you might know, he bracketed out the Christian faith for I think 3 months plus, completely. He wanted to launch himself into a duel of fire. That's his expression, no? So he didn't say liturgy or didn't say bravery, nothing of that sort. No? He wanted to enter into that void, complete that field of pronunciation, absolute pronunciation. So he practiced out, and that's a real spiritual adventure. No? Yes, entertained his in Advaita, I would say. So there, what is more important is the kind of radical surrender. In that process, he depended upon Ramana Maharshi. He was following Ramana Maharshi's meditative method. Oham or Atma Vijarana Marga, not who am I? Who is the thinker of thinking like that? That famous Vedic meditation. He really do that, basically speaking. So when we look at deep into his way of approach to understand Advaita from the very heart of Advaita, surrender. Here, I find a kind of methodology in him this way. See, Buddha speaks about surrender, no? How to be in the present moment. He speaks about surrender in 3 ways, no? Usually, when we understand surrender, we surrender ourselves to certain systems, ideology, constitution, communication, etc. We accept. We surrender and try to understand and construct our identity in terms of that particular ideology or whatever. So that is a kind of surrender outward. We surrender another, a guru or something like that. Second surrender is surrendering to oneself. I accept myself. Yes, that is a very first important step in our spiritual movement. Self acceptance. Self acceptance. As I am, I accept it. It's not only we don't accept it. We accept an ideal me. Real me we never accept. So that is the second surrender. When we accept it, then there is a scope to grow. Here in these two things, there is a subject and object and also an action. Three things. I surrender to the constitution, I surrender to myself, and there is an action. Buddha says about another surrender, that is a radical surrender. A surrender, in that surrender, there is only pure action, there is no subject, there is no object. A pure karma. That kind of surrender can be done now, here, now. Only in the present moment, in the sacrament of the moment, not in the past or future. We become karma. And if you look deep into our existence, it is nothing but karma. God has become karma. It is when He begins to create the whole world. Because pure being, when it acts out, it should be pure karma. For that, he has to die. Then only he can become a karma. There is only karma that is in the process in the whole universe, multiverse, this gigantic multiverse of thousands and thousands of planets and Milky Ways. It's a pure karma. There is no that kind of karma is a total renunciation. So God could create the whole world because He surrendered without any motives or nothing of that sort. So this kind of surrender, I think Abhishiktananda has done this kind of surrender when he bracketed out all Christian faith. It was excruciating an agony, for him. It's not easy, And he was tempted by, okay, this is some Satan is doing some work or something like this, totally tempted like that. But he entered into that divine darkness or luminous darkness. He came out from that, He wanted to burn in that way. His expression, the fire, he wants to burn. So this is how, it's not an easy thing, but it is very interesting, it's very relaxing. And once you entertain that, it will liberate you like anything. This method is bracketing out. So only when we do that surrender, we get free from our set patterns. We have to deconstruct ourselves, the unconscious, all kinds of things we have to deconstruct. It's a difficult process. It is like the darkness, so I look at it.
What strikes me, Sister, I think what you're putting on the table is like, is there a contemplative praxis from the Western tradition? And it seems like the answer is, at least in modern times, that there really isn't. It's the feeling I get like when recently I had to, I went quite closely through the Secret of Arunachal. This is the encounter Abhishiktananda has with Ramana Maharshi. And the feeling I got was that he came here, he didn't really have the praxis per se, but he just imitated. He just imitated what he saw around him. He was so inspired by those swamis that lived up on the hill. And if you've read that book, you know how you just meet someone and you watch very closely what they're doing and try to imitate it. I remember in my own kind of struggle, in my short Catholic religious life, to look for a Catholic, a practice on contemplation. And you had to go back to like Evagrius Ponticus, you had to go back to the 4th century. Because even the Middle Age mystics don't give you any real practical teaching about how to do it. Evagrius give you some things, because even there is limited. So I guess when I was reading that recently, again, that Secret of Arunachal, I asked myself, well, if Abhishiktananda had stayed in France and hadn't come to me, would he have had these insights and been able to write these words? At least for me, the answer is clearly no, he wouldn't have been able to.
So I think another way to rephrase your question is is reaching contemplation with a capital letter a work of human or a work of grace? Because this is the question. Because if we start from the idea that reaching contemplation, basically the divine, is a human enterprise, but of course we enter in a very strange territory. The territory of how do you know if the divine we find is really divine? Because one of the big problems in spiritual life, and is also mentioned by Abhishiktananda, is to recognize if the spirit that you are touching is a real spirit and not yourself. So there is a passage in his diary when he says, I'm losing my eternity, this time eternity is right. I'm losing my eternity for an illusion, which is exactly your point. So to be contemplating doesn't mean to add a further faculty to your human faculty. It means to touch God. It means to touch the divine. And so, because he was a very skilled spiritual seeker, he was asking himself, okay, but what I'm pursuing is the real divine, or is it an illusion? And so, going back to the point, is contemplation, the reaching of the divine, a human enterprise or not? And I think it is. Must be the work of the Spirit, because only the Spirit recognizes the Spirit. In every possible religion, this is one of the principles. Only the Spirit recognizes the Spirit. So it's the grace, not the method.
Anyone else? What would be any comments or questions? Related to what we're discussing or something else? Okay, so it's 10:85. We'll end.
Not now, maybe after this, we can have a discussion. This is a big problem we have in India. What is Western and Eastern way of contemplation? What is that? That makes it distinct, different. People are mixing everything together. That will not help us. What is precisely Asian way and what is Occidental way? That is, I think the coming discussions we should build upon these questions so that people who are participating will have the clarity in these things. There's so many things we can discuss on this.
Anyone else? Don't be shy. So we'll.
How will you be participating in the? How will you be participating in the meeting that follows this symposium? How will you be?
You mean from this group? Oh, okay. So Father Sebastian is asking how many here in this group are intending to stay beyond Sunday and participate in the Oblates retreat, which goes from Sunday till, it goes from the 10th to the 14th. So how many of you are planning to stay up to the 14th? Sebastian.
Number?
One, two,
So it's like we got
6, 4,
8, 9, 10, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Practical, can be anything. Now, one announcement, so many people have been asking for the schedule. We only got the schedule finalized here recently, so it's now posted, it's posted in the dining hall and the T-shirt, okay? So that way, if you're in the dark about what's next, you can just glance there. We deliberately didn't send it out to you guys because there were some hitches in there, and we're still cleaning up a little bit. There's a schedule there, okay? So you can consult that. Our next thing tonight is regular Vespers. Yeah. So 6 o'clock. Yeah, so we'll have optional meditation, if you'll talk, come at 7 o'clock, we'll have 6 o'clock will be a bell, we'll have meditation, and then at 7 o'clock will be our Vesper. 7:30 is dinner. And then tomorrow morning, well, usual, we will be here, in this hall at 9:30.
Yes.
Yes, 9:30 tomorrow, in this program.